Organizations often hold on to hierarchical leadership because it feels structured and safe. But could it be that this very structure is what holds them back? I've seen teams struggle under rigid leadership models where decisions flow slowly from the top while employees who are closest to the real challenges have little say. At the same time, I've seen companies thrive when leadership becomes more dynamic, allowing decision-making to shift based on expertise rather than title. What if leadership wasn't about maintaining control, but about enabling agility? Maybe the most effective organizations aren't the ones with the most defined leadership structures, but the ones where leadership flows naturally to where it's needed. Traditional leadership assumes that authority equals competence, but could it be that the best leaders aren't always the ones at the top? I've seen businesses where the most insightful ideas come from those without formal leadership titles, yet their contributions get overlooked. Meanwhile, I've watched executives struggle with decisions that could be better handled by the people actually doing the work. What if leadership was based on ability rather than hierarchy? When leadership is dynamic, the right people step up at the right time, making organizations more responsive and effective. Some assume that a strong leader must always have the answers, but could it be that the best leaders are the ones who create space for others to contribute? I've noticed that organizations stuck in rigid leadership structures rely too heavily on a few voices, missing the collective intelligence within their teams. But in workplaces where leadership is shared, innovation accelerates because people feel empowered to contribute. What if leadership wasn't about directing others, but about creating environments where everyone can lead in their own way? One of the biggest barriers to dynamic leadership is the fear of losing control. Could it be that real control comes from trust, not from enforcing rigid structures? I've seen organizations where employees hesitate to take initiative because they worry about overstepping their boundaries. But I've also seen companies where leaders trust their teams, allowing people to take ownership of decisions. The result? Faster execution, greater innovation, and higher engagement. What if the key to better leadership wasn't more oversight, but more autonomy? I've noticed that many organizations focus on developing individual leaders rather than building a leadership culture. Could it be that leadership isn't a title, but a shared responsibility? I've seen workplaces where leadership is something that only happens at the executive level, while employees are expected to follow orders. But I've also seen teams where leadership moves fluidly, allowing people to take charge when their skills are most relevant. What if the best organizations didn't just develop leaders, but developed leadership as a collective strength? Organizations often mistake hierarchy for stability, but could it be that adaptability is the true foundation of success? I've seen businesses struggle because their leadership structure was too rigid to handle change. At the same time, I've seen companies that embrace dynamic leadership adjust quickly, staying ahead of shifts in their industry. The difference isn't in how much authority their leaders hold, it's in how well leadership is distributed. What if the most future-ready organizations weren't the ones with the strongest chains of command, but the ones with the most adaptable teams? I keep coming back to this. Leadership isn't about titles, positions, or authority. It's about movement. Could it be that organizations thrive not when leadership is concentrated, but when it's shared? I've seen teams transform when leadership stops being about who's in charge and starts being about who can contribute the most at any given moment. What if we stopped trying to fit leadership into a hierarchy and started seeing it as something fluid, dynamic, and ever-evolving? Maybe the strongest companies aren't the ones with the most structured leadership, they're the ones where leadership can come from anywhere. Leadership isn't about rigid hierarchies. It's about adaptability, collaboration, and empowering the right people at the right time. Could it be that organizations struggle with leadership not because they lack capable people, but because they rely too much on static structures? A critical thinking workshop using the 5 C's and 8 D's model helps organizations shift from top-down decision-making to a more dynamic, responsive leadership model. When leadership is seen as a fluid process rather than a fixed role, organizations become more agile, innovative, and resilient. It starts with conceptualizing, helping employees understand leadership beyond titles and authority. Many organizations assume leadership means making decisions from the top. But could it be that real leadership happens when decision-making is distributed? A structured thinking workshop trains participants to recognize leadership potential in different contexts, helping teams shift from dependency on a few key individuals to a culture where leadership emerges naturally based on expertise and situation. Once leadership is redefined, cognizing enables employees to develop leadership skills based on their own strengths. Some people lead through strategic vision, others through problem solving, and some through emotional intelligence. Could it be that organizations limit leadership by expecting a single style to work for every situation? The 8 dimensions of critical thinking, 8 Ds, including extroversion, introversion, sensing, and intuition, help employees discover their own leadership approach while learning to appreciate diverse leadership styles in others. Comprehending ensures that leadership is not just about individual ability, but about how well leaders understand the complexities of organizational challenges. Many leadership failures happen not because of lack of confidence, but because decisions are made without full awareness of how they impact different areas of the organization. Could it be that structured thinking helps leaders see beyond immediate solutions? A critical thinking workshop trains participants to analyze leadership decisions with a systems thinking approach, considering interdependencies, risks, and long-term effects. Dynamic leadership isn't just about having the right mindset, it's about knowing how to execute effectively. Characterizing in leadership means defining clear steps to act, delegate, and guide teams. Many organizations get stuck between planning and execution, where decisions stall due to lack of clarity on next steps. Could it be that leadership isn't just about vision, but about structured action? A workshop model ensures that participants develop the ability to turn leadership insights into practical, measurable behaviors that support team success. The final step, concluding, ensures that leadership decisions are not just made in isolation, but are aligned with organizational growth and adaptability. Many teams struggle because they follow leadership structures that are no longer effective, but hesitate to change. Could it be that leadership needs to be continuously refined, based on feedback and evolving challenges? A critical thinking workshop trains participants to evaluate leadership effectiveness, adjust strategies as needed, and develop a leadership model that evolves rather than remains static. The 5 Cs and 8 Ds model in a structured thinking workshop doesn't just help employees understand leadership, it redefines leadership as a process that shifts based on expertise, need, and situation. Could it be that the strongest organizations aren't the ones with the most rigid leadership structures, but the ones where leadership is dynamic and adaptable? When employees learn to think critically, make strategic decisions, and step into leadership roles when necessary, organizations become more flexible, innovative, and ready for the future.